We're maxing out the machine. Boom. We got back today. Surprise, surprise. We're starting with lat pull downs. I know it's the same thing we do for pretty much every back workout, but I'm telling you, I like doing them. So I already did 2 warm-up sets and 1 working set. We're probably going to do like a high volume back day today. So I'm doing like 4 working sets here. And I think we're going to just copy and paste what I did for my most recent chest workout that I posted, where I'm just kind of doing things that I like to do. Okay, so some things might be redundant, but I don't really care because I just want to have fun. The goal is to push as heavy and as hard as we can, still focusing on proper execution and form, being intentional with most of our movements, but I'm not going to be too nitpicky in terms of exercise selection. So if there are things that are a little redundant or repetitive, I don't care. I want to have fun. So 3 more working sets here. We're going to get into it. I'm going to go get some chalk and you guys wait right here. Okay, that was our second set. We have 2 more sets here. My focus is to pyramid these sets. So I'm going to try to go heavy for the next 2 sets, or heavier, sorry. So I was just at 195 and now I bumped it up to 210. Rep range I'm focused on is, again, hanging around that 8 to 12. Now the heavier we go, hopefully I hit 8. Lat pull downs is one of those things that people, at least in terms of my this is anecdotal, so at least in terms of clients, a lot of people that I've worked with or spoken to, they always have a difficult time with lat pull downs, or at least progressing at the movement. And I think first and foremost, use chalk or wrist wraps. If you're not using any sort of wrist strap when you're doing back movements, you're missing out. It's not cheating, and it's not that you're neglecting your forearms or your grip strength. You're here to train back. You're not here to train your grip. If you want to train your grip, go train your grip with actual grip focused exercises. But if you're training back, focus on actually getting the most out of the movements, and use wrist straps and even chalk. It makes a world of a difference. So that actually can help right off the bat increase the amount of load that you're doing if you're stuck or you're plateauing. 2 is, this might not be scientifically true, but this is just something that I think logically makes sense, is generally when we first start working out, our bodies sort of adapt fairly quickly at the stimulus. So we actually are able to move up in weight rather quickly or at a quicker pace. The longer you start training for, the harder it is to progress over time. The progress becomes extremely incremental. So if you're used to increasing the load by like 10, 15, 20, even sometimes 30 pounds when you're just starting out, 30 pounds might be a bit extreme, but my point is you can jump in weight and increase the workload at a faster rate. But the more you start doing that, the stronger you get, but you will hit a wall or a ceiling at some point. And that's going to be when you plateau. But it's not that you're actually stagnant. See, a lot of people think you're stagnant when you hit that plateau and you're like, oh shit, it's been a couple weeks and I'm still at the same weight. That is completely normal. You can be stuck at the same weight for even a couple months. That is so normal. It's almost crazy because people think like, what the hell, I'm stuck. Now what do I do? Just give it time, slowly and incrementally increase. Add 5 pounds, add fucking 2.5 pounds if you want to. My point is you're gonna slowly increase the weight once you've been working out long enough. So don't get that stuck in your head that when you're just starting out, you're able to increase the load at a fast rate within the first year or 2 of training. You're gonna hit that ceiling, but it doesn't mean you're stuck or stagnant. It just means that your body's adapted, and now you're gonna slowly have to get stronger over time, and that's completely fine. You don't have to always focus on the load as well. You can focus on the amount of reps you're doing, try to push for an extra amount of reps, or add an extra set onto your workout session at that allotted rep range that you've been doing. So again, this is all progressive overload. It doesn't always have to be weight related or load related. So hopefully that helps. This one is a tough one because the resistance profile, as I've mentioned, is it gets heavier as you pull. So that's why we typically get stuck through here and we're not able to finish out the rep with lat pull downs. So just be patient and continue on that path and focus on increasing the reps, the volume, the sets, things like that, instead of the workload, if your primary goal is to get stronger at this movement. Okay, enough of that. Third set here now. And we're gonna stay focused. All right, we've covered the form like 1,000 times. Not quite 1,000 times. I have only posted like sub 30 videos. So we've covered this probably like 10 times max. But the point is, the form and execution for this, people tend to get wrong, or maybe not wrong, but maybe not the best form out there. They use a lot of momentum and swinging. As you can see, I might be using some momentum and that's completely fine. I am trying to push heavier, and the heavier you go, I don't recommend being super rigid, you know, let your body move through the movement. I've spoken on that in previous videos. For the form, make sure that this is set up properly. So in other words, you want this pad down as far down as you comfortably can, allowing you to drive your calves up, driving your legs into this pad to keep yourself locked in. You want to keep your hips on the seat the entire time. You don't want your hips or butt to be coming up in the seat. That probably looked a little weird and questionable, but you don't want your hips and butt to be bouncing around on the seat as you're performing this movement. So try to keep yourself stable. The reason being is the lat pull downs, particularly overhand and wide, is going to target primarily those lower lats. So your lower lats are going to be biased the most in this movement, just based off of arm path, width, and the actual movement itself. And the thing is your lats actually insert at your hips. So if your hips are moving around in the movement, and as you come up, as your hips come up and as your hands go up, and that weight's pulling you off the seat, you're actually losing tension. So you want to keep your hips planted the entire time as your hands go up, because that's going to give you the greatest amount of stretch in those lower lats. So keep your hips planted. Next, in terms of your grip, that's totally preference. Some people like slightly wider than shoulder width. Some people like really wide. It doesn't really matter. The point is, the wider you go, the less bicep you're going to be recruiting, because you're going to have minimal elbow flexion. The more narrow you hold, the more elbow flexion you're going to have, thus more bicep recruitment. So again, preference, play around with different hand positions in terms of your width. For this movement, we are going overhand because we don't want to use much biceps. And then lastly is going to be the range of motion. That's going to vary depending on the person. So as you pull down, if you notice, I'm not necessarily touching my chest with this bar. I just don't really have that mobility necessarily. I'm just focused on squeezing my lats. And whenever the point is where I squeeze my lats, that's pretty much where the bar is going to end. Okay, so I'm not focused on necessarily the distance traveled. I'm focused on just working the lats through the full range of motion in this particular movement, which is full stretch and then squeeze. As the reps progress, as the fatigue sets in, I'm not going to be able to bring the bar down nearly as much. You could use a little bit of momentum to help and assist with those reps, but try to avoid cheat reps altogether. And then lastly, control, control, control. Control every rep, control that eccentric, but don't control it so much. I know I stress about control a lot, but don't control it so much to the point that you actually start losing performance. Okay, so focus on, if your goal is to lift heavy today and progressively overload and try to push past the weight that you've been doing, still keep the form in mind. Don't get sloppy with it, but definitely allow, you know, yourself to move through the movement and allow that eccentric to be a little less time. If it's only 1 second, that's completely fine. So in other words, here to here. You're just focused on executing the actual movement and getting the most out of it and getting the most reps. The minute you start slowing down the eccentric on purpose, I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice, because you're actually just impeding your performance. We can get into the science of that later if you guys want to know why, but for now, that's the form. Okay. All right. Fourth and final set. Those last reps were probably a little ugly, but I'm trying to push past and do weight that I'm not used to. So if you notice too, last thing, I'm trying not to lean back the whole way. So I'm trying not to swing all the way back. Again, the more you lean back in the movement, so what I mean is the more I'm actually swinging back and leaning back, the more I'm just doing like a high row at that point. And I'm going to take the tension off my lower lats and I'm putting it in more of my upper back and mid lats. So I'm trying to keep as upright as possible with still allowing to move naturally through the movement. So I'm still swaying back a little bit, but if anything, I'm just arching my back, squeezing everything. That's just what works for me, and I feel my lower lats engage big time. So, all right, moving on. We're gonna do dumbbell rows. Oh, all right, we got our last set coming up. I already did 2 working sets. This is going to be the third and final set here. I did go up in weight, as you guys saw, so my first set was 130s. Now I'm maxing the dumbbell rack at 150s. My form is probably petering towards shitty, for lack of a better word, towards those end reps, but I'm really trying to keep myself locked and stable through the whole movement and control the weight as much as I can because I want to get stronger at this actual movement. So I am increasing the load a bit and sacrificing the form a tiny bit. For my form, if you notice, I like to have my leg on my working side forward. So I keep the leg forward on my working side like this in the split stance that you guys are familiar with. It's just the opposite from what most do. Most people do a split stance like this, so their leg on their working side is behind because they fear that if they bring it forward, they're going to be hitting their leg. Now, I have my leg forward for one main reason, and that's to keep myself as stable as possible. Because I have my leg forward, I'm able to keep it underneath the center of mass, and it prevents me from twisting too much in the movement. If I have my leg back like this, I do start to lose stability in the movement, and I'm more likely to twist and rotate to perform the dumbbell row. So I have my leg forward, I'm planting it underneath my sternum. So if anything, I'm shifting my weight slightly over top of it, trying to at least. And this is going to allow me to keep my hip and leg out of the way of the actual dumbbell. Now, the heavier you go, the bigger the dumbbell. The bigger the dumbbell, the more likely you're gonna hit your leg anyway. So it's gonna be awkward to move, but the point is I don't have any issue with it. I'm not coming in front of my leg like this. I'm just keeping the weight beside like this the entire time and just driving up. Now I'm trying to keep my elbow tucked the entire time, but obviously it does get hard to keep that elbow tucked fully, just based off of my body position and shoulder width. That's gonna vary depending on the individual. Some people might be able to tuck that elbow. Some people have it slightly flared. It's completely fine. I like having mine slightly flared anyways. It's just more comfortable, and it allows me to still target the lat, but also target some of those upper back muscles as well. And then that goes into my last sort of setup. I'm intentional about keeping my chest slightly up the entire time, so I'm not rounding forward, but I'm also keeping my torso angle slightly elevated, so I'm not horizontal with the ground. If I'm horizontal with the ground, I am going to be targeting primarily more of those lats, which is completely fine, but I do want to do seated rows today anyways. That's going to already target that. So I keep myself upright, and I'm working from this sort of low to high position, which allows me to target more of those upper back muscles anyways, and the rear delts and stuff like that. So that's why I'm intentionally more upright as opposed to trying to keep myself more horizontal with the ground. And then lastly, control, control, control. So come down for that full stretch, protract that shoulder forward, get that stretch in your back, and then drive that shoulder and elbow down and back towards your hips. Okay, third and final set. Come on. Oh. 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 Okay, we're gonna move on. We're gonna do a machine row, starting now. Come on. That was working set one for this low row. Look, I know this might be pretty redundant because I just did dumbbell rows, especially the setup of my dumbbell rows that I explained is very similar to this. I just like this machine. I feel like doing it today. So like I said, things are going to be a little redundant. I'm not saying you guys have to copy me. I just feel like doing this today. I like this machine a lot. Feels good. And because it's a low row, a low to high, I can also hit the rear delts really well, depending on where I hold. That's why I like this machine. But for today, I'm holding shoulder width or slightly wider than shoulder width. And I'm just facing the machine. As you've seen in the past, I've angled my torso a bit. Today, we're just going forward. And the goal again is to just push as hard as we can, push the weight as heavy as we can. Still focusing on form. I'm gonna give myself like another minute rest time, and we're gonna go heavier. Oh. Hey. Hey. We're maxing out the machine. Oh no. It's all hard work. Oh man, it's good. I'm like limiting the rest times today, which is good. I'm not going too long where I get cold. Borderline might be going a bit too fast. But no, I feel good. I feel strong today. And I think the hard work is showing. Okay, we got one more set. We did go heavy, as you guys can see. We maxed out the machine. Still focused on 8 to 12 reps. I'm gonna try to push to 12 now. Like right to failure. If you notice, I'm not going necessarily right to failure on every single set, but for this one, usually I like to go to failure on the last set, or at least as close as I can. 1 to 2 reps shy is still efficient. If you go to failure on every single set, you are literally going to do yourself a disservice unless you are a genetic freak and you can recover like crazy. People ask, when should I go to failure? I think I've said this before, try to take every exercise you do to failure so you know what that feels like and you know what your limit is. That being said, you don't have to do it all in one session. You don't have to do it all in 1 week. Try, as a rule of thumb, to take the last set of every exercise in your session to failure. But, you know, if you start focusing too much on taking every single set to failure, I do think you're doing yourself, again, a disservice, because that fatigue in your nervous system, in your body, can 100% trickle in and spill over into the next day, even if you're doing a different body part, even if you're doing, you know, lower body as opposed to the upper body you did prior. So it can definitely trickle in to the next session and spill over. And all I mean is that you're going to feel the residual effects of fatigue set in. So you're not going to be able to push yourself nearly as hard if you just pulled back a bit, and you would have still probably got the same stimulus, and actually maybe more, because you're able to recover off that. So, you know, there's no right or wrong. Everybody's different. Take every exercise to failure just to see what that feels like, but you don't have to do it all in one session. And again, try things out, see what works best for you. After all, you know your body more than anybody else. Okay. Last set. Boom. 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 Oh. Boom. 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 Hey. Hey. That's it. 11. That 11th one was probably absolutely pitiful, but I'm okay with that. Oh man. Oh man. All right, we're gonna move on. We have seated cable row next. So we're gonna do something a little specific for that, where we're focusing more on the lower back, spinal erectors, things like that, getting a full stretch and definitely moving through the movement. So I'll show you that, how I like to do them. Okay, I'm out of breath. I'm gonna catch my breath and I'll see you there right now. We're counting that as a working set because we're on our second last exercise and I'm already pretty warmed up. So if you notice a few things, I'm doing an narrow grip seated cable row. Now I've touched on this in the past. I'm not a huge fan of the narrow grip. I like something that's a little wider, still neutral though, but something that's roughly shoulder width. Now, this gym doesn't really have, I mean, we have a shit ton of attachments, don't get me wrong, but nothing with just your typical circular handles. They have the mag grip ones, but in my previous back video, I said that I didn't like them for the simple reason that they flare outward. And when I'm trying to keep elbows tucked, my wrists are kinked like this. And it's just a weird feeling. I feel like I lose grip strength because of something called active insufficiency. So that's why I don't like it. But we are using an inferior attachment, which is going to be more narrow, which again, the more narrow is, the more my elbows will start to flare out towards that end or shorten range. But again, we're being nitpicky here. My focus on this movement is to get a deep stretch through my whole back. And I'm intentionally leaning forward, as you see, and then pulling back because I do want to work my spinal erectors in this movement. So I'm actually trying to just target the entire back for the most part. I'm reaching forward, stretching everything, and then pulling everything through, squeezing everything, intentionally targeting my lower back and those spinal erectors. And then we are going to do more lower back work towards the end of this. So that was working set 1. We have 2 more. And as you can see, I am really tired. So we're just going to stay focused and get going. Oh man, I'm dying. Holy shit. Look how fucking sweaty I am. Shin sweat. Shin and calf sweat. You know? Final set. Third and final. This is it. And then we have hyperextension. So we're still working more lower back. Hate to break it to you guys if you're following this workout. If not, I don't know what you're doing. 15 pounds heavier. This might be hitting ego territory, but I just want to try it. No harm in trying. I don't think I've done 195 on here, at least with the dual pulleys. Okay. Come on. Oh. Right now. We're gonna move on. We got hyperextensions, and then we're getting the hell out of here. I'll see you there. Look. Holy shit. Oh, okay, we got one more set, guys. That was the first 2 were both working sets. Pretty straightforward. I mean, in terms of the adjustment, this machine here, this Atlantis hyperextension, you can actually adjust the angle, which is really cool, but I have it set somewhere in your traditional mid-range, similar to this one here. That's more static and you can't change the angle, but you can also change distance of this pad in terms of how high up and how low on your hip this pad's going to be placed. on pretty much all the machines. So I generally have this hip pad set just around hip height, so right around here. Okay, maybe slightly below, just wherever's comfortable. Just know that the lower you go, essentially the more glute's gonna be activated and hamstring. So the higher you go, the less hamstring and glute and the more lower back. But I have it set just sort of somewhere in that mid-range. Just comfortable for me. I could actually probably bring this up one more notch. There we go. Well, that might be a bit better. It might be just more lower back for me. Now, in terms of the actual execution of every rep, I want to keep my chest up as high as I can. I know I'm holding onto those weights. As I come down in the movement, as I'm in the bottom of this movement, and then as I initiate that rep, I'm like scooping and curling my back up, squeezing my lower back. Now, obviously I'm not looking up necessarily. I probably should. I'm tired, guys. I'm doing the best I can. Point is I'm holding these weights and I'm just trying to pick that chest up and squeeze that lower back as hard as I can. I don't want to initiate the reps with my glutes. I want to initiate the reps with my lower back. The whole goal is to target the spinal erectors. I'm not trying to intentionally target the glutes or the hamstrings. So that being said, we're going heavy. We're trying to load them, aiming for that 8 to 10 rep range, right to failure. And that's about it. So this is the last set. We got 90 pounds here, 2 plates. We're just gonna go right to failure. Whole stretch, squeeze. That's it. Okay. Some of you guys might be wondering why I'm doing hyperextensions anyways and targeting the lower back when I already just did seated rows, which is also emphasizing the lower back. And it's just, again, preference. I actually really like doing this. I like the feeling of training my lower back and my spinal erectors. I like the pump I get in them. And then also, I took a lot of time off from training them. I just kind of neglected them for a few years when I used to train them a lot. And I know you get some stimulus when you're doing like RDLs, and I don't deadlift other than RDLs, so that's pretty much it. So I know I'm still targeting them kind of in that movement, but not really, because I'm just holding them in more of like an isometric hold. I'm not really using my spinal erectors other than to just keep myself stable. So this is more so isolating them, and I think it's extremely beneficial. And I've actually noticed how much this transfers into all my lifts. I can now go heavier on RDLs and things like that because my lower back isn't giving out. I can go heavier on dumbbell rows because my lower back isn't giving out. So I actually highly recommend dedicating time to training your lower back, doing hyperextensions if you don't do them. Add them onto your back days, even add them onto your leg days if you wanted. But that's pretty much it. That's it for today's workout, guys. If you made it this far, you guys are real ones. I appreciate you. And as always, continue to work hard, continue to be diligent, be intentional with your movements. Take it easy. I'll see you on the next video, but before you leave, remember to stay focused. We stayed focused today. No distractions. We pushed through. We minimized our rest time, not too much to the point where it suffered our performance, but enough where we could remain focused and remain in the workout through the entirety of it. And I think you guys should do the same. So again, take it easy, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks, guys.